Hello, Steve and Dan Fouts here. We're veteran educators who've created the Teach Different Conversation podcast to inspire all of us to think deeper, listen with more intention, and understand each other better. If you're a parent, educator, or anybody who wants to think in new ways that build real understanding about what's important in life and to help others do the same, then you've come to the perfect place. Welcome, everybody, to the Teach Different podcast this week. We're really excited to have a New York Times bestselling author, Dave Burgess, here with us with a very interesting quote. And, you know, we've been having quotes with philosophers and past presidents and so on. Tonight, we have a entrepreneur, author, and speaker, Seth Godin, with a really interesting quote about a lot of themes, but self-reliance is one really key theme that jumps out of his quote. We'll get to his quote in a minute, but just to remind everybody of the method that we're going to be working with, we're going to start with that quote. We're going to interpret the quote, providing a reasonable claim. What does it mean? Put it in our own words. What exactly do the words in the quote mean? Get that picture, right? Agree with it. Even if you don't agree with it, agree with it. And then we're going to move towards the counterclaim. We got to push against the quote to develop those critical thinking skills and see the world in a little bit of a different way. And therein lies the tension of the conversation that the method generates. And then we'll end with an essential question, something for everybody to think about, and send you on your way. So that's the plan here, and we're ready to begin. So I'm going to give the quote by Seth Godin, and then Dave Burgess is going to jump in with his interpretation and give a little bit of his incredible background. Here's the quote. Reject the tyranny of being picked. Pick yourself. Reject the tyranny of being picked. Pick yourself. Dave, welcome to the Teach Different podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be on the show.
What do you think this quote means?
So to me, this means, I think that too many people think they have to be selected, they have to be chosen, they have to wait for someone else to grant them permission to do something that they want to do in their life. And so what this quote is saying is like, you don't have to raise your hand. You don't have to ask permission. You don't have to be selected. You don't have to be chosen for the team. Go out and do it yourself. If there's something work you want to put into the world, pick yourself. Go do it. Go do it now. There is no need to raise your hand or get permission or be selected.
Love it. And tell us a little bit of your background and how you live by this quote.
Yeah. So I was doing professional development workshops on this program I'd created called Teach Like a Pirate. And first of all, right away, it became a situation where, listen, if I want to get this message out there, I need to start submitting proposals. Conferences aren't going to just come to me. They don't even know who I am right now. They're not going to come to me and ask me to speak at their conference. Schools aren't going to come and select me to be their keynote speaker for a professional development or something like that. I need to go to them. So I started submitting conference proposals all over the nation. And if any conference in any state said, yeah, you can come to your pirate thing here, I got a plane ticket, I got a hotel room, I bought a conference registration. I was going into debt at this point in my career. I bought a conference registration and I went and I did my thing. I just knew that if I could get this message in front of people, that it would take off. If I could go pay to speak at this conference, then people would see me and maybe they would come in, they would choose me to go and select at their school, right? And so, but it took me stepping out there first. Same thing happened with the book. A publishing company came and offered a contract. We read the contract. We hated it. We didn't like anything about it. I always say the only thing missing was a ski mask and a gun. And but I'm not a publisher. But you know what we did is we did a ton of research and we decided to form our own publishing company. We didn't like the methods that were out there. So we formed our own publishing company to try to solve some of the problems we saw in the industry. And we put out Teach Like a Pirate from a laptop at the kitchen table. So we published this book off a laptop at the kitchen table. We chose ourselves. We didn't wait to get selected, right? And then now, this is almost surreal to tell you guys this, but this little book, I wrote it at the house at night after most people had fallen asleep, after people in the house had fallen asleep after teaching all day, wrote it at my house, published it downstairs off the kitchen table. And now this little book has been translated into Korean, 2 forms of Chinese, Russian, Spanish, and we've sold over 500,000 copies of it from our house. And so then what happened next is other people were like, hey, like, how are you doing this? Like, we don't want to sign those contracts either. Once again, we decided to select ourselves. We didn't try to raise our hand and say, hey, can we put other people's books out too? We just did it. We said, you know what? We know how to do this. We did it with Teach Like a Pirate. Let's do it with other people's books too. And so we started signing people and became a full-on publisher, still working out of the house, even to this day, still working out of the house. And we publish over 150 books from educators around the world. And, you know, if your listeners are avid readers of professional development books, maybe some of their favorite books are published right at my house. They just didn't know it. Like The Innovator's Mindset by George Couros, Kids Deserve It, The Wild Card, Ditch That Textbook by Matt Miller, Learn Like a Pirate from Paul Solar. It's like all these books are published right here at the house.
I know why you picked this quote, Dave. Like that, wow. I mean, you've lived it, right? If you hadn't lived this quote, you would be doing something very different, right? And you probably wouldn't be even nearly as fulfilled. It's inspiring. You know, I just, I'm really in awe of it. Although I feel like I have that bug myself. I never like to wait for someone to tell me when I can and can't do something, or God forbid, tell me what I'm worth. You know, it is something that you have to get it from within, right? And that's what I really see in this quote. The big word in the quote, Dave, I picked up on, obviously, tyranny. And, you know, I'm thinking about a quote like this on the board. So picture this, Dave, you know, you walk in, you got your middle school, you got your elementary kids, you got your high school kids. This quote is on the board and they see this word tyranny, you know, and probably a lot of them aren't going to know exactly what it means. I love that part of great quotes because you circle a word like that, right? And before you even have the conversation, talk about tyranny. And sometimes I'll put up the definition of tyranny on the board, right? And I looked it up before we were talking here, and I got a definition of cruel use of power or control. Right. So that's really what this quote, I feel like, is saying, as you're stating, right? Don't let others control you. You can't rely on that because they could abuse it, right? You control yourself, you pick yourself. So
absolutely.
That's what I get. This is what I'm getting out of it. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, so tyranny is an abuse of power. And so that's what I saw when I read a publishing contract. Now, I mean, I'm going to tell you exactly how this went down. I did a workshop in Washington, D.C. at the NCSS conference, and a publisher sat in on my workshop, came up right after the workshop and said, hey, we would like to meet with you. And so I met in the coffee shop of the hotel with this publisher, and they offered me that contract. I went straight up into my hotel room and I Googled publishing contracts because I thought she was trying to cheat me. And then when I Googled them, I found out she was not trying to cheat me. Hey, that's what they look like. And to me, it did look like an abuse of power. It's like, wait a second, this is my intellectual property. I'm going to travel around and speak about this. I'm going to build a social media platform, and you make how much money? And I make how much money? It made no sense to me at all, right? And they wanted to take creative control of my project. They wanted to remove the edgy stuff. They wanted to take out some of the rants and all those different things. Then they said it's too personal, and where's the data? Where's the footnoting? Like all this kind of stuff. And that was not the book I was looking to write, right? So I knew they not only wanted to take my intellectual property rights, they wanted to change my message. They wanted to tone it down and give me like 10%. of something, right? Where I'm going to be the one that's going around speaking and on social media promoting my message, right? And they're going to make 90%, I'm going to make 10%. It was absolute tyranny. And the tyranny came from the fact that it used to be that publishers were the gatekeeper. You had to have a traditional publisher in order to get your book onto the shelves of a place like Barnes and Noble or a traditional bookstore, right? But now we know that that's not where books are sold. Hey, if your book's on Amazon, you're for real, and anyone can be on Amazon, right? So there was some disruptions in the publishing industry, like distribution. How are books distributed? Well, now they're distributed on online platforms like Amazon, places like this, right? And so because of these disruptions in the industry, I mean, there's two others that we could talk about as well, if you want to, but the gatekeepers lost their leverage, but yet their contracts do not reflect that loss of leverage. They still have the same contracts that they used to have. And so the industry is based on an outdated model. And whenever you see an industry based on an outdated model, that means it's time for it to be disrupted. And so what we try to do is be a disruptive force in the publishing industry.
And you are. And you picked yourself. It's stepping out there, though, Dave. I don't have to tell you this, right? It's not like every day is great. You know, it takes that courage. You got to get through the bumps. And Dan, I don't want to leave you out here, but what do you have to add to this?
It's the courage. It's the confidence. You have to see the fruits of your labor, of being able to be self-reliant and confident. But when you see that, and that generates that belief and faith that you can actually do it, it's a snowballing effect. And this is where, Dave, you put this quote in front of young people, and the conversation, I would ask things like, what is something you've done where you've relied only on yourself and it worked out and you didn't depend on anyone else? What did it feel like? Did it make you want to do it again? The kids need to hear these stories from each other, because I think the kids actually have these successes inside them and they don't share them with others. And a lot of kids who might not have those successes need to hear it from their fellow students.
Bring those stories out too. Ask them, have you ever been left off the team? Have you ever been left off of a group of friends, left out?
Exactly.
And, get them to admit that doesn't feel good, right? You're fighting against something that's natural, to want to be a part of something, to want to get affirmation, but then tell them to talk about what it was like when they picked themselves. I think that'd be great to get the conversation heated up.
Yeah, and that's something I talk to kids about all the time. It's like, hey, you don't need permission to learn. You don't have to have an assignment to learn. Too many kids look at school like it's they're jumping through hoops, and they're sitting there waiting for someone else to, like, okay, what is it that I'm supposed to learn about? And what do I have to do? And then it just becomes a checking off of the box. And that's what learning becomes to them, is like, I just have to check off these boxes that the teacher has presented for me. It's like, no, you don't have to have permission to learn. If there's anything that you want to know, do, be, go get it. Go after it. It's all out there at your fingertips. Just go get it. And that was the same, for the publishing thing. I didn't know anything about publishing, right? I don't know anything about hiring an editor or getting a ISBN barcode on the back of the book, or distribution, or any. I don't understand any of these things, right? But all that information is out there, and with it's like it's been it's kind of flattened opportunity. I guess made it available to everyone. The internet, right? So I research, and if I didn't know how to do something, I hired someone to do it. And so it's all out there for you. Don't let other people gatekeep you.
I think the word is agency. There's lots of words to call it, but this is true agency. And lots of students, lots of people just don't have it in the same way. And this quote, I think, really is telling people something that they need to consider if they haven't considered it before. This agency, the fact that you can do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, if you talk to kids, when you hear people talk to kids, what kind of job do you want to get? Like, who do you want to work for? But how often do we say to kids, what kind of job do you want to create? Like, what kind of business do you want to start? It's always about like, hey, who are you going to work for? Who's going to select you? Like, how's this going to look? We always said, you know what? You have to think about how this is going to look on your resume. It's always about someone else looking and selecting us as opposed to what we can go do in the world. And even if you look at it from the standpoint of a job, if you're an employer and you have an employee, well, do you want people that just do the things that are given to them, or do you want people to proactively step out on their own? And have you created a work environment where they feel comfortable making their own decisions? And that's the kind of even employee that we want, not just the kind of entrepreneur we want. We even want employees that do this, but it's something that we don't actively promote and teach in school very often.
Yeah, it's a management philosophy. It's not like it's terrible to work for someone else. It's what that leader is like. What do they want from you? What do they expect from you? How do they want to empower you? How do they want to keep you incentivized? You know, that you can have good management structures. So yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to jump in with another example. I teach seniors, Dave, primarily in high school, and they're in the college search process. You want to talk about listening to young people feeling like they are completely controlled by other people. It's that, you know, what do I need to say in my essay? What do I need to do this? What directions do I need to follow so that someone will accept me? It's the same mentality. So I see it all the time.
And when you look at that situation, if you read a book, say like David versus Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell, and the fact that the kid often thinks that it has to be the big name school that's going to be success. And Malcolm Gladwell and David versus Goliath is saying that actually it's often you're better off being a big fish in a small pond. And you can be just as successful, if not more successful, from any of these smaller schools as opposed to the big school. And that could serve as to your advantage, actually.
Great point. Absolutely.
Great point. We're at that point. I think I feel comfortable with this claim. I think we're preaching to each other, right? We're preaching to the choir. I think we're all on this claim. I at least not only agree with it, it's like a lifestyle. Dave, I don't even have to ask you, right? So let's do this. Let's make the pivot. Let's take a deep breath and let's think about what the claim is trying to say. Keep that in the back of our mind. And then let's think of a counterclaim. Let's think of a piece of advice or a way of looking at the world that offers another perspective that also provides some guidance, some advice, some wisdom. And it might not necessarily jive with these go-getters, right? That are always picking themselves, don't want to listen to anybody about who they are and if they're good or not. They're just going to say what they are. What is a counterclaim, Dave? Do you have one in mind? Dan, you as well. Let's build something against this a little bit, create some tension.
Well, so one thing that comes to mind right away for me, I think there's a couple different ways a couple angles at tackling a counterclaim. I think one of the angles of a counterclaim could be that this statement comes maybe with a little bit of privilege, in that I'm saying, hey, just go start your own business. You don't need to have a publisher, stuff. Well, but now I'm a white male middle-class person with a wife who had a full-time administrative job, and I have middle-class income. I have some capital in order to hire my editor and to get a copy editor and to print books and to start a business and to incorporate and like all these different things. I have people that I know that I can tap into and ask for advice. I have a network. And I'm socially connected and all these different things. So it comes with, the statement comes with a little bit of privilege that like, hey, like how come you haven't started your own business and been successful. Well, maybe not for everybody is it that easy, or that they have even the capacity or space in their life, time in their life, because of what's pressing on them so directly in order just to survive and get food on the table or whatever it might be. So I think that's one angle that you could push back on.
Yeah, it's almost the privilege of agency. Everyone would like to think that they're the author of their own destiny. They can do anything. They don't have to listen to anybody. They can determine their own self-worth. But you're right. There are people in different situations where that it's not as if that we don't believe they could do it. They're just maybe not at a place where it's realistic. And that's something to acknowledge.
Another angle, maybe for a counterclaim, is, and maybe I'm reading a little bit too into this, but that's okay. Being picked for something and seeking the approval of others has its own advantages. You can feel wanted. A lot of kids are people pleasers, right, Dave? They want to do the kinds of things in class or on the sports team that make their coach proud or make their parents proud. There's a very genuine, authentic satisfaction that comes from doing other people's bidding. And it's not, one way to look at it is it's not a negative thing at all. It's one way to live that might be a little safer, might be a little less risky, but is equally beautiful, but in different ways.
Here's something you could ask real quick. I think students to share. Do they know anyone who likes to impress people? Someone who is okay with someone telling them of if what they're doing is right or wrong. They almost want that because that helps them know that they're on the right track. And they just like impressing other people. I don't know if I caught on, Dan, there.
They seek that validation.
The validation. Thank you.
Yeah. And so I think another possible way to look at this is it's always going to be a mixture, because although I picked myself, I wrote the book that I wanted to write and created the workshop and we built the publishing company, all these things, still at the same time, I have to design my workshop with the idea that I want it to be pleasing to the audience, that I want it to be successful with the audience, I want it to be effective with the audience, and I want the person who's hiring professional development speakers to select me. So even as a business person,
good.
I have to be selected. My book has to be chosen off of Amazon. So I have to be selected in a sense off of Amazon. And so it's not that you're rejecting the opinions of other people or their feedback or their input or all these things, because ultimately you're going to need that, right? So the same thing with a business. Some kid just can't go like, I don't care what the customers think. This is the business I want to start. Well, that doesn't work, right? You better care what the customers think if you're going to start a business. And so in a sense, even when you pick yourself and start a business, you still have to take in the feedback of others and think about who your target audience is, your clients, and be someone who is selected by them.
You have to be a leader and a follower. Yes. And do them both very, very well to be successful in life.
Yes.
Dave, that was beautiful. You made me think of the word tyranny. And let me try this. Maybe a tyranny isn't bad as long as the tyranny is a customer in your own business. If you're going to have to do someone's bidding and make sure that you're always fulfilling the wishes of someone, at least pick who that is and decide that on your own. It's not necessarily bad to do that. It's just that you want to have that kind of combination you were referring to. Work for yourself, start your own business, but it's okay to live up to other people's desires and wishes and expectations.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of choosing to be of service, right? That you have to serve as a business owner. You see yourself as someone who's serving the clientele, and so like many times we're presented with books that I think, it's something you have to be intentional about, right? Like here's the book. I think this book would be successful and sell, but I don't believe in this message. So even though it would be a successful book, I'm in control of my brand, and I have to go to sleep at night, and I have to be comfortable and feel good about myself and what work I'm putting into the world. And so you have to be intentional about who you're allowing to influence you, who is going to be the tyranny
Right.
that you accept into your life, right? And whether or not that's of service to others. And I think it was Zig Ziglar said the best way to become successful is to help other people get what they want. And so that's what we do. I'm trying to get as many books as possible into people's hands, educators' hands, that will be of service to them. And the better I am at that job, the better I am at serving their needs, the more successful I will be as a business owner.
Yeah, exactly. And again, back to the privilege idea, Dave, you've gotten to a point where you can look at a book, it'll sell. But like you're saying, if it doesn't help you as a person in your brand and what you want to put out there, you can say no. That's nice to be able to say that. I think that as people are learning to have this autonomy and this agency, it's a little bit more of a desperate situation. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but they're more inclined to take anything that's possible, maybe to get them to the next level, and then they can evolve into something that's more, I don't know, selective. I use the word privilege again. That probably wasn't the right
The
concept.
way to say it maybe is that along these decisions about relying on yourself versus on relying on others, there's a moral component to this, where you have to have a moral center that helps you make decisions on what you're going to do. It's not just about being successful. You have to pick wisely. So there's a moral component.
Yep. I also think there's this element of that it's not that you have to reject these hoops that have to be jumped through. It's that you can see the hoops as something that maybe is going to serve it's going to help you reach a greater purpose later. If I think about, I did have to jump through certain hoops. And for example, Derek Sivers, he has a quote he has this kind of concept he talks about. It's early in your career, you say yes to everything. When opportunities come, you say yes to everything because you're getting exposure. You're on your climb up, right? And so you have to get in front of as many people as you possibly can. And that's what I did. I said yes to every conference, every single speaking opportunity. Anytime I can get a group in front of me, I said yes, right? Even if it was costing me money to get in front of them, right? Yes, 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 yes. And then at a certain point, all of a sudden, then it transforms. And then you're able to start to say, you know what? Only say yes if it's there's different profanities you can put before that S, right? Unless it's an F yes or a heck yes, okay? And so then you transform and say, look, I'm not going to say, unless I look at this and go, heck yeah, I want to do that. I don't do it anymore. Conference says, here's the deal that I want you to come speak and go here and do this and do that and that. If I'm not excited about it, I don't say, I'm at a point in my career now where I can say no. I just do it. So now my calendar is filled with heck yeses, right? But when I first started, I didn't turn anything down for any reason, right? And so I think that's important for kids to know too, is, hey, you might have to go get that job. You might have to go work at that fast food place that you don't want to work at. You might have to build that resume a little bit. You might have to do some jobs and take some classes that you don't want to take in order to get that major, which is going to eventually allow you to be able to reject the tyranny of picked. But you might have to go through some hoops first to get there.
Well said. Well said. Because you run into that a lot with students. They want the now, of course, right? They feel like they're above these jobs where it's not fair. They don't like their boss, but it's a process. You just have to keep that goal in mind. Great. Yeah, that's a really, really good way to say it.
I talk to my son about this all the time because he's talking about well, I want to get a job that makes this much money or that kind of this. And I don't want to do that. Whoa. And he talks, well, you're a business, you have a, Inc. 5,000 multi-million-dollar business. I want to do something like this. I'm like, whoa, hold on, wait a second. I went straight to college. Then I got a teaching credential. Then I taught for 17 years before I started my business. And like, you're talking like you're 20 years old and like, you want to make like how much money? Like I wasn't making that much money. I was like going to college and going to night school. I was working as a basketball coach during the day and going to night school to get my teacher credential. And then in order to have a 17-year career, which eventually led to me discovering the business that I wanted to start. But all that stuff came first, right? Oh. And so you don't necessarily just get to jump right to it.
They just see the end. They just see the end and assume that that's where they should start.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. You know, role models are important, right? But they also are misperceived. Dave, you make it look easy. You know, like, why wouldn't I want to do what you're doing? But they don't see the struggle. They don't see the hoops. Yeah. You know, so that's a tough one with the kids.
My first Teach Like a Pirate professional development workshop was in the summer of 2006, I believe. All right. My book was published in the fall of 2012. So I spoke for 6 years about Teach Like a Pirate before the book even came out. And then the next book number 2, wasn't published until 2 years after that, 2014. And then is when it started to spiral and go. And all of a sudden, DBC Inc. books are everywhere, but they don't see, the start of it was me speaking for 6 years with no book.
God, that must have made that book a lot easier to write. I'm just kind of thinking about it. If you can get the verbal down, you probably had that so just polished.
It's so true. I tell people all the time, I cheated. I sat down at the computer and typed out what I say because I had honed the message. I'd crafted it. With real authentic audiences, I had a chance to see what resonates, what doesn't resonate, what do they want more information on, all those kind of things. And so it became a better book in the long run. Also, because it was spoken for so often, the book had more of a conversational tone to it.
Nice.
And so it feels more like someone's talking to you as opposed to reading a textbook, right? Yeah. And that's something we talk to people about it all the time. People will come to us and say, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. A person will come to us and say like, hey, I want to sign a book contract. I want to publish a book, and then I'm going to go around and speak about my book. And I always say the same thing to them. No. You've got it backwards. Go speak. Craft your message. Hone your message. Then write a book, right? You have it backwards. And then, of course you can speak about the book and all that, but go out and test your message first before it's printed on the page, something permanent. You want to go out and get it in front of an audience first.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. What great advice to give, how to be successful and to get your message out there. Well, Dave, this has been great. Is there anything else? Like when people ask, how do I get a hold of Dave Burgess? What's your stock response? I mean,
yeah. So you can find me at daveburgess.com. I'm at @BurgessDave on Twitter. My name just flipped around to Burgess Dave. Instagram, I am DBC_INC on Instagram. And I have a podcast, The Dave Burgess Show. And man, do I need to get another episode out. It's been a while.
Fantastic. Well, we really appreciate you, being on this podcast. We end with an essential question that just gets people thinking and continuing to ponder the wisdom of the quote. And the quote again was, reject the tyranny of the picked, pick yourself. And one essential question, when should you rely on yourself? Something to think about. Dave, we wish you best of luck. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your life experiences and your inspirations.
Hey, it was my pleasure to be on the show. I really appreciate you having me, and I love the work that you two are doing.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We hope you're walking away feeling energized by some great ideas and are confident that conversations like this are possible with just a little bit of planning and a 3-step method. Make sure you go to teachdifferent.com to learn more and check out our library of conversation plans, where we've compiled dozens of quotes, each with their own claim, counterclaim, and essential question. Good luck, and don't forget, to teach different with conversations and make a difference every day.